Cannabis is not simply a plant, it is a test of the soul, and most who touch it are unprepared for what is revealed. I have seen how people argue about it, calling it medicine, menace, holy, or sinful. But none of those labels reach its essence. The plant does not obey your beliefs. It does not bend to the opinions of culture. It only reflects what already lives within you. That reflection can be light, if you are ready, but it can also be shadow, if you carry fear and unrest. This is why in ancient days the plant was never taken casually. It was handled with the care of fire, approached as a key that could unlock a doorway into realms beyond the ordinary. In truth, it is never neutral. It magnifies, it amplifies, it draws to the surface what you would rather keep hidden. The danger is not in the leaf itself, but in the soul that meets it without reverence. In the visions shown to me, I have witnessed seekers who believed they were chasing peace, yet found only their own restlessness magnified. The plant did not fail them. It only revealed the chaos they had carried all along. And I have also seen the humble ones, those who cleanse themselves in silence, in prayer, in fasting. And when they met the plant, it opened a true portal to stillness. They did not use it to decorate the ego, but to dissolve it. This is the distinction that few recognize. Without preparation, the experience becomes indulgence. With preparation, it becomes initiation. Long before joints were rolled and dispensaries stood on city streets, the plant was treated as an ally of spirit. It was never a pastime. It was never escape. It was a door to the inner world, a mirror that cannot lie. The unready recoil at what they see, calling it a bad trip. Yet what they are fleeing is their own unprocessed grief, their unspoken questions, their forgotten anger. The ready ones walk through, trembling perhaps, but willing to face themselves. In that courage, the plant serves its highest purpose. The test of cannabis is subtle but absolute. It asks nothing of your body and everything of your spirit. It does not care about your mood or your preference. It cares about your intention. If you come seeking distraction, it will show you more noise. If you come seeking truth, it will strip away illusion. I have often reflected on this and whispered to those who listen. Be mindful of what you carry when you approach this mirror, for it will not invent anything new. It will only make louder what was already within. Some have asked me why so many feel anxiety, paranoia, or the sense of being watched after smoking. They believe it is the strain or the dosage, yet I tell you it is the unveiling. The veils of the ego are torn, and for a moment the soul sees itself without disguise. That sight can be overwhelming when one has not prepared the heart, but it is not punishment. It is not cruelty. It is truth, and truth often unsettles before it frees. So I speak to you directly. Do not treat cannabis as a toy. Hold it as you would hold a sacred flame. It can illuminate or it can burn, depending on how you enter. Remember that every doorway in spirit leads both ways, to light and to shadow. Without preparation, you may stumble into the shadow and believe the plant betrayed you. With reverence, you may glimpse the light and understand that the plant was never the source, only the mirror. The true test is not whether you can endure the sensations it brings, but whether you can accept the reflection it offers. Can you look at your own grief without denial, your own fear without disguise, your own longing without shame? If you can, then cannabis becomes a teacher. If you cannot, it becomes a tormentor. Though in truth it is the same plant in both cases. The difference lies only in you. I have lived long enough to see humanity repeat the same error with every sacred tool, turning what was once ritual into routine, what was once holy into entertainment. Yet the spirit of the plant has not changed. It waits as it always has, patient, uncompromising, ready to reveal. The question is never what the plant will do. The question is always what you will do when faced with yourself. And so I tell you, cannabis is not an escape, not a cure, not a shortcut to awakening. It is a test of the soul. And in that test, the only thing revealed is the truth you carry already. Prepare yourself, and the door opens to stillness. Neglect preparation, and the same door opens to confusion. The mirror does not choose the image. It only reflects. Cannabis was once a doorway that only opened when the soul was ready. In ancient civilizations, no one touched this plant medicine without undergoing a strict process of purification. People did not approach it to chase a feeling. They approached it as if standing before an altar with bare feet and an empty heart. In ancient India, its leaves were offered to Shiva, the deity who dissolves illusion and burns the ego. The sadhus did not smoke for pleasure. They smoked to die, at least to the self. That death was not an end, but a beginning of another awareness, where the false was burned away to make room for the sacred to emerge. In ancient China, Taoist sages combined cannabis with other herbs to harmonize energy, open inner Tikkun, and bring the body into deep stillness. They did not use it to lose sensation. They used it to touch subtle perceptions that ordinary life could never reach. To them, cannabis was not a plant, but a spirit, a catalyst, a companion on the journey beyond the self. In Sufi communities, hashish was used in chanting rituals to dissolve the ego into divine presence. Yet even within these mystical traditions, the plant has always been a source of controversy. Rumi once warned against false intoxication, the kind that mimics awakening but never touches the soul. Only when it led to the disappearance of the ego was the plant considered worthy. Every serious tradition understood that this was not something to be used, but something to be met. The ancients did not consume, they communed, not for amusement, but for elevation, not for excess, but for union. In the Rastafari tradition, cannabis is Kenya, the herb of healing, a symbol of wisdom. But even there, it never stands alone. It is lit with prayer, shared in reasoning sessions where words and smoke rise together like invitations to truth. They do not smoke to forget. They smoke to remember that God is present in all things, in their very breath. The leaf becomes part of a ritual, an inseparable element of the sacred whole, in motion, without chanting, without the circle, without witnesses. Ganya becomes just smoke. What these traditions share is not the plant itself, but the way it is held. The medicine is sacred, not because of what it is, but because of how one prepares before meeting it, before a first inhale. There are always days of cleansing the body and quieting the mind, fasting, meditation, walking in solitude, bathing in cold streams, chanting in silence, not out of superstition, but because they understood the mind must be still before it can be safely expanded. No one was allowed to cross the threshold of the sacred with hands still dirty from the old life. No one could bring unresolved fear, anger, or desire into a holy journey without consequence. I have seen many souls who thought they were seeking light, but were really carrying chaos. When they encountered the plant without protective ritual or guiding community, they did not open. They unraveled. What they saw were not revelations, but echoes from their own unhealed regions. This was not the fault of the plant, but of the lack of preparation without a space to receive it. Even light becomes too much to bear. Cannabis does not automatically open heaven. It simply reveals where you are. That is why the ancients never walked alone. They always walked with the circle, with song, with the breath of the community. The presence of others was not to witness you. but to hold space for your soul to return in safety. The plant is not a miracle. It is a test. And ritual is how you protect yourself from the unstable parts within. Today, what has been forgotten is not the plant, but the way it was once held. It is not that ganja has lost its spirit, but that people no longer possess the stillness to enter that sacred relationship. When the ritual is lost, the plant loses direction. When preparation is dismissed as a burden, frightening things will appear in the disguise of promise. And I tell you, no door should be opened if you are not ready to face what within you is calling to be healed. Cannabis is not gentle. It is ancient, intense, and honest, and like every honest being, it will not pretend you are ready when you are not. Today, people no longer enter sacred space with bare feet. They enter with dirty shoes, phones in hand, and minds cluttered with unresolved noise. Cannabis is no longer held as a sacrament, but sold like a snack. You can buy it at a convenience store, use it between social media scrolls, and call it freedom. But freedom without preparation is not liberation. It is a fall disguised in beautiful words. A ritual stripped of its soul becomes habit. A sacred symbol disconnected from its source becomes commodity. The plant has not changed. It still holds its original frequency, still reflects precisely what you bring to it. But when you approach it not with preparation but convenience, what gets amplified is not stillness but fragmentation. When there is no circle, no invocation, no silence, cannabis does not lead you inward but drifts along scattered waves. It is not the plant that has lost its compass. It is we who have thrown away the map. In the past, before the smoke was lit, people bathed, fasted, prayed, and held silence for many days. Today, people light it up in the middle of arguments, in boredom. In an attempt to escape emotions they do not have the patience to face. The experience is no longer a ritual, but a convenience. Sensation is consumed instead of offered. The problem does not lie in the plant. It has no intent to harm. It simply does one thing, which is to expand. And when you expand without grounding, what gets magnified is the very chaos you have never learned to hold. Those who tremble after a single use often think they took the wrong strain, the wrong dose, or had a chemical reaction, but very few have the courage to admit that the plant did not create their anxiety. It only illuminated the anxiety they had already carried. It did not create the noise. It only amplified the sound already echoing within them. We have lost the ability to read the signals, and when we do not understand the signals, we call them malfunctions. People believe they have gone through a bad trip, when in truth, it was a real moment, without the arms to hold you, without an awakened community, without someone to hold space. What was meant to be revelation is mistaken for panic. The plant does not cause you to unravel. It only cracks the mask you forgot you were wearing. Today, cannabis is spoken of as a lifestyle, a fashion, a market, bright images, catchy slogans, and marketing language around chill and relax make us forget that this was once a ritual. Anything that was once sacred and is consumed as entertainment will always leave consequences, because the spirit, when reduced to consumption, does not disappear. It becomes distorted, and when it is distorted, people no longer recognize they are standing before the sacred. They think they are merely indulging. A vast number of young people are entering altered states of consciousness without any tools to understand what is happening within them. They feel open, but have nowhere to enter. They feel sensitive, but do not know how to listen. They are drifting, thinking they are free, but in truth they are being swept away without a shore to land on. And in that state, Cannabis becomes something that amplifies disconnection rather than reveals truth. The danger does not lie in the substance, but in the context. When ritual is missing, when there is no guide, nor listening, the plant does not know where to lead you. It does not choose you, it only responds. It does not carry you to peace. It only shows you where you already are. I have seen souls enter states of openness without any anchor. They carry intense feelings, strange images, powerful sensations, and they believe that is awakening. But awakening is not in the experience. Awakening is in what you do after the experience ends. If you cannot bring that light into daily life, if you cannot turn what was seen into what is lived, then all you have is a moment drifting in smoke. Cannabis has not been degraded. We are the ones who have degraded the relationship with it. And if you want to restore the sacred, you do not need a different plant. You need to return to how you enter that relationship. It is not the plant that needs to change. It is you who must be prepared. When you come to it as a ritual, you will see it is still a doorway. But if you come to it as a product, all you will receive is smoke. Cannabis does not create fear. It only illuminates where fear has long existed. When you feel anxious, disoriented, as if someone is seeing through you while under the influence of the plant, that is not a side effect. It is a reflection. Since ancient times, those entering altered states of consciousness were warned about the shadow, not the shadow as commonly associated with evil, but the part of you that you do not want to see, the part you have denied, forgotten, or lacked the courage to face. Carl Jung called it the shadow, a hidden region of data where unprocessed pain, unspoken truths, and suffocated emotions are stored. Cannabis does not create those memories. It simply pulls back the curtain. I have witnessed thousands of souls, after a single inhale, fall into a state that seems unstable but is in fact a threshold. That doorway does not lead you to heaven. It leads you inward, and inside there is not only light, there is everything you have ever avoided. People call it a bad trip, but I call it an incomplete ritual, because if you stop at the panic, you will carry the fear and build a story that the plant harmed you. But if you continue, hold your awareness, steady your breath, and look deeply into what is appearing, you will see it is not a threat, but an opportunity to heal feelings of being watched. Exposed, unmasked are not signs of losing control. They are signs that the outer shell has begun to dissolve. When the ego can no longer manage the information flow, it resists, it panics, but you are not breaking, you are being peeled open. What you once labeled as your identity is now being lit up, and that is rarely comfortable. In mystical traditions, the moment of exposure is never seen as failure. It is the beginning, a calling, an invitation into the most sacred part of the journey, facing yourself. But in the modern world, where there are no guiding arms, no sacred space to hold the transformation, people go through this, unraveling in isolation, alone in their room, staring at the ceiling, heart racing, feeling like they are falling into a bottomless dark, and they think something is wrong. The truth is, the plant is doing exactly what it is meant to do. It does not decorate. It strips. It does not soothe emotion. It surfaces it, so you can see the full landscape. The body reacts. The mind collapses. Belief systems begin to loosen. But this is not an end. It is a threshold. If you have a place to return to, someone to lean on, a space to integrate what is rising, you will pass through. But if you resist, ignore, or keep numbing yourself, The cycle will repeat. The next session will be the same, and the next, until you no longer feel anything but the vagueness of a soul not yet brought back into unity. I have seen many people carry the plant as a tool for release, yet never ask why they carry so much that needs to be released in the first place. Cannabis does not bring the truth. It merely invites you to see it. It does not untangle your life. It only lights up the knots. If you do not untie them, they will appear more clearly each time you inhale, more vivid, more intense, not because the plant has grown stronger, but because you are less able to pretend not to see. The problem is not what you feel. The question is whether you are willing to enter that feeling as you would enter a ritual. Those who are honest with their fear, their wounds, their imperfections, will find light on the other side of the smoke. Those who lack the courage to stand still before their own darkness will go in circles. Then blame the plant, the circumstances, the world. But the door does not close. It simply waits for someone quiet enough to listen to what is truly happening. Cannabis is never an accident. It is a signal. It does not drown you. It reveals you. And when you are strong enough to stand before that mirror, you do not only see the shadow, you see the potential for awakening trembling to be recognized. But that potential does not appear in radiant light. It appears in the moment you are willing to sit with discomfort, not to escape, but to ask, what is this here to teach me? If you are humble enough to ask that question, the plant will no longer be a challenge. It will become a teacher. Nothing misleads the soul more effectively than false light. Cannabis can open up a realm of perception that feels transcendent. Thoughts become rich. Music turns sacred. Space appears vibrant, as if woven from different layers of reality. Many come out of that state with a notebook filled with writings they call revelations. They believe they have seen the truth, that they have touched a cosmic doorway, that they have awakened. But truth does not lie in what you feel. It lies in what you become afterward. I have seen people become enamored with their own experience. They begin to live within those heightened moments as if they were the destination. They build a new identity around the depth they believe they have reached. But depth that is not tested through action quickly becomes self-deception. The plant can create the sensation of expansion, but expansion is not the same as maturity. False light is when you believe you have seen, while in reality you have only touched an amplified layer of sensation. You believe you have understood, while you have never truly lived what you claim is true. Truth does not reside in the visions of expanded states. It resides in how you navigate conflict, how you face those who disagree with you, how you love without conditions. And these do not emerge in moments of climax, but in the steady repetition of daily life. I call it the maze of light. The more you see, the less you truly touch. The plant can trick your senses, creating a state that closely resembles presence. You think you are awakening, while in fact you are drifting in a space lit up by your own desire to feel special. No one is immune to this temptation. Even those with good intentions can fall into the illusion of evolution, simply because they once felt deep. But true depth never makes you proud. It makes you humble. Many people, after using cannabis, begin to speak in refined language, quoting sacred texts, writing journals, rich in philosophy, but I have observed their lives closely. Relationships remain tense, reaction still defensive, suffering still ongoing. Only now it is expressed in more elegant ways. The pain does not vanish. It simply takes on a more poetic form. That is not healing. That is a reshaping of illusion. In mystical traditions, this is called spiritual inflation. When the ego puts on the robe of awakening, when the old self is dressed up in spiritual language, it is still the ego. Only now it knows how to talk about enlightenment. But no one enters true freedom unless they are able to live truthfully. Truth never needs to be dressed in dazzling light. It only needs to be lived. Cannabis does not deceive you. It is the desire to be special that makes you forget that even light can betray you if you lack discernment. I have warned many that the plant is not a master, it is a mirror. And if you look into the mirror and only see what you want to see, that is not illumination. That is a reflection of your craving. I do not deny that cannabis can lead you into an open state, but openness is not the destination. It is merely the condition that allows the transformation process to begin. If you do not turn that openness into concrete action, into new choices, into a different way of living, then the light you saw is only a brief flash. It comes and goes, leaving behind another hunger, pushing you to keep searching in the smoke for something that cannot be sustained without discipline. I have said before, true light does not come from the experience, but from the action. Truth is not proven by a state, but by how you return to the world, how you serve others, how you walk through pain. If after everything you still react the same, still avoid the dark, still live to chase feelings, then you have not awakened. You are simply seduced by false light. And if you do not stop, you will gradually lose the ability to distinguish between brilliance and sincerity. The plant is not the problem. The problem is what you do with what it shows you. And if you keep standing in the light without stepping into life, you will become someone who gazes at mirrors, but never realizes that the mirror cannot live for you. The mirror only shows that it is you who must choose to move forward. Cannabis was never meant to be used in isolation. In every tradition of serious practice, the plant never stood alone. It was always surrounded by the circle, by prayer, by music, by the synchronized heartbeat of a community holding space for one another. No one touches sacred fire alone and walks away intact. The community is not merely a witness, it is the structure that protects the energy. When a doorway is opened, it is not only your soul that comes into contact with the invisible world, your energetic body also becomes vulnerable if there is no container to hold it. I have seen many people step into an expanded state with no one to accompany them. No ritual keeper, no guide, no one still enough to illuminate what they are seeing. They turn on music, light the plant, and drift into a realm full of sensation but completely lacking in direction. What should have been held in silence and awareness gets swallowed by images, rhythms, and constant information, and afterward they can no longer distinguish between a message and a hallucination, not because they lack the capacity to understand, but because they do not have a structure to retain what they have seen. In ancient rituals, the preparation was always more important than the moment of using the plant. People fasted to cleanse the body, meditated to clear the mind, bathed in cold water to awaken presence, chanted to align their frequency. Everything aimed at one single purpose, cleansing the system. Because if you are not clean, the plant will not bring you to the light. It will amplify the garbage. It will take the chaos you are already carrying and magnify it tenfold. And then you will believe you are having a deep experience, when in truth, you are simply drifting through undigested remnants. Ritual is not about formality. It is energetic hygiene. Just as the body needs bathing, the energy field needs cleansing. When you enter a sacred space without cleaning beforehand, you are bringing old energy into what should have been a purified experience. And the result is this: you cannot hold what the plant gives you. You feel so much but integrate nothing. Cannabis can be a bridge, but without supporting structure, that bridge will collapse halfway. The ancients never let that happen. They created structure through ritual. They created community as the arms that held the one who was opening. In that space, you do not need to be strong. You only need to be honest, because someone is holding safety for you in the midst of your release. They do not do the work for you. They do not interpret the experience for you. They simply hold the field steady so you feel safe enough to look into your deepest self without panic. I have seen such circles, breaths in sync, eyes held in awareness, words chosen with care, the plant lit not as a habit but as an invocation. And in that space, you do not get lost in illusions. You are reflected, reminded, brought back when needed, because no one awakens completely alone, and no soul should walk through darkness without a hand holding the candle. In the modern world, people no longer have patience for ritual, no more time for community. They want the experience. Now, they want to open without preparation. But when you have no place to put what you receive, it will slip away, and you will chase it again in the next session. That is not evolution. That is addiction to sensation. The plant does not demand worship. It demands containment, and that containment cannot exist without structure, without the circle, without the ritual, without the community. Look at all traditions that still hold depth. You will always see one thing. No one walks alone. No one does this just for themselves. And no one calls an experience an achievement if it is not lived and shared in an embrace wide enough to hold the truth they just received. You do not need a forest. You do not need a temple, a quiet room, a few conscious friends, a clear intention, and absolute reverence for the moment. That is ritual. That is community. And if you can hold that, the plant will return to its true form, not smoke drifting through a meaningless life, but a doorway leading you back to where you once belonged. Not every deep experience is awakening. Not every expanded sensation is truth. And not everyone who feels intensely is heading in the right direction. Cannabis can bring you to the threshold of awareness, but it is you who must decide whether to step through, and to step through rightly, that you need a quality that most souls in this era have lost. That quality is discernment. Discernment is not doubt. It is the inner blade, the thing that can cut through the glamour of experience to reach the core of truth. The Greeks called it the inner sword. In the Vedanta tradition, it is called viveka, the ability to distinguish between the real and the unreal. And I tell you, there is nothing more dangerous than a soul entering an expanded state without carrying this blade. The plant amplifies everything. It does not choose what is right. To keep, it enlarges all of it. A vague mind will become more vague. Unexamined beliefs will grow more rigid. Floating thoughts will appear like revelations. And if you do not know how to hold what you feel up against the blade of discernment, you will begin to build a worldview full of imagery but lacking substance. You will begin to mistake emotion for truth. I have seen people living inside journals filled with writings created while high. They call it truth. They return to read those lines as if studying sacred scripture. But truth is not found in what you write during a high. Truth is found in how differently you live when sober. If you do not show more compassion, if you are not more patient in pain, if you still react the same in conflict, then everything you wrote, everything you felt, is just form. Cannabis can make you believe you have evolved, when in truth you are merely floating through levels of awareness that have not yet been anchored in action. Truth does not come from the intensity of feeling, but from the consistency of choice. It is not about how much you see, but about what you retain, not about how far you open, But how you return to this world, if you do not live more honestly after each experience, then you have learned nothing. I have said to many souls that the clearest sign of spiritual maturity is not in the depth of experience, but in the simplicity of behavior. The more mature someone is, the less they need to show it. The further someone walks, the fewer words they use, the clearer their vision, the more humble they become. If you need a heightened state to feel special, if you need to be seen to feel worthy, then the plant is not helping you evolve. It is merely feeding another layer of illusion in a more refined disguise. Discernment does not come from the intellect. It comes from deep inner stillness. You must be quiet enough to hear the truth beneath the waves of emotion that are trying to convince you that you have arrived. You must be brave enough to ask, is what I am seeing truly right? Or is it just what I want to hear? And if you cannot question even the things that excite you, you will never escape illusion, because false light always feels comforting, while truth is sometimes just a deep silence with no immediate answer. The inner blade does not make you numb, it makes you honest. You can see something beautiful without needing to grasp it. You can feel expansion without calling it your goal. You can hear a message within yourself without needing to build a new religion from it. The deeper you go, the less you need to prove. The more awake you are, the less you talk about awakening. Cannabis does not choose the worthy. It only amplifies. If you carry shadow, it will be revealed. If you carry light, it will be revealed too. But if you carry the desire to be special, it will inflate your ego until you believe you have become an awakened one. And if you lack discernment, you will remain in that place, thinking you are at the summit, while in truth you are standing in a fog so familiar that you call it light. The plant holds no responsibility for the truth. That responsibility is yours. And if you do not sharpen the blade within, you will go in circles through deep feelings without ever touching the core. The stronger the experience does not mean the truer it is. The simpler it becomes, the clearer it becomes. The more silent it gets, the closer it is to the center. And if you step into expansion with an inner stillness, the plant will no longer be a maze. It will become a doorway, and you will know when to walk through. But you will also know when to stop. Cannabis is not awakening. It is only the knock on the door. True awakening begins when you no longer rely on that door to feel connected, to feel safe, to feel special. I have met many souls who, after deep experiences with the plant, believed they had arrived somewhere, that they had crossed the boundary of ego and touched the invisible realm. But then, when the state faded, they returned to the same loneliness, the same familiar reactions, the same unnamed fears. What they saw was real, but it was not enough, because it was not integrated. I always emphasize that vision is not the hard part. The hard part is living differently because of what you have seen. When you say the plant has shown you a truth, I do not ask what you saw. I ask what you changed. Transformation does not lie in the smoke. It lies in how you return to reality. Do you listen to others more attentively? Do you walk through old wounds with more patience? Do you slow down to love yourself more? If nothing shifts, then that experience is only a beautiful memory. Many people speak of their high experiences with pride, but I do not look at the experience, I look at the humility that follows it. If someone comes out of an expanded state and becomes less judgmental, speaks less of themselves, lives more kindly, I know they were truly touched. But if they only repeat what they saw, while repeating the same old patterns, then that light never reached the depth of their soul. The plant is only a catalyst. It can bring you to the threshold, but only action takes you inside. You cannot live forever in a heightened state. You must learn how to keep the flame when the smoke is gone. You must learn to remember the feeling of wholeness even while standing in the chaos of daily life. I used to tell those who had gone through expansion to sit down and write what they saw, not to remember, but to live by. Every insight must become an action. Every image must become a commitment. It does not need to be many. If you hold just one thing and live fully with it, day by day, the light will soak into your body, and you will no longer need to repeat the experience. Integration is not the most exciting part. It is not radiant. There are no visions, no grand revelations. It is discipline. It is quiet. It is knowing when to turn off the music, when to leave the circle, when to step into the humble room of your own being to carry out what you have seen. No light is true if it is not brought into the way you love, the way you serve, the way you show up. Cannabis is a mirror, but no one can live inside a mirror. You must step out and live for real. You must bring that light into moments that feel like nothing special. When you are cooking, working, hugging someone you love, it is there that awakening begins, not in the feeling, but in the repeated choice. I am not saying you must abandon the plant. I am only saying you must never let it become the center. When you begin to believe that you need it to feel deep, to remember who you are, you have forgotten the most important thing, that every sacred feeling you ever had is already a part of you. The plant only lifted the veil. It did not add anything to you. And for that reason, you can keep walking without it. Awakening does not begin when you see something grand. It begins when you live fully with something small. When you are patient enough to love someone without expecting return, when you keep your word to yourself even when no one sees, when you choose awareness in the dullest of moments, if you can bring that into your life, the light the plant once showed, you will never fade. It will become the way you walk, the way you see others, the way you answer life, and you will no longer need the smoke, because you have become the flame